every time. A lot of times. Katie's the one back there. Oh, yeah, right.
I see him.
Mommy, right there. Mommy, right there. Mommy, right there.
That's you're right. North Platte.
Yeah, these are they're access gates. They're designed specifically to shut off.
It's power steering mode.
A lot of electrical on that one. I thought we were, yeah, are we going anywhere else?
Well, they have limited stops.
To be touring the Bailey Yards, and the Bailey Yards was named after one of our presidents, Ed H. Bailey. And in 1995, we were put into the Guinness Book of World Records as the largest railroad yard. This railroad yard consists of about 2,850 acres, which would be the equivalent of Sunday and it's football time. That would be 3,097 football fields. That shop that we just toured, the diesel shop, it's large enough to hold about 3 football fields. It spans about 8 miles. I was told yesterday there's approximately 120 tracks, the south, the north. Put them end to end for rail. We have about 315 miles of rail. We handle about 10,000 rail cars every 24 hours. Oh, you're fine. Nope. We have, I've got two different statistics here. There's somewhere between 2,600 and 3,500 employees that work here at Bailey Yards. About 1,000 of them ride the rail either east or west from here. The first thing that we're going to come to is our east hump. The significance of the east hump was built in 1968. We handle about 1,500 cars every 24 hours over this hump. What this is, it's a classification yard. What we do is we take a train from the west and it comes to town and the power gets cut off and it goes to what we call the barn or the diesel shop. And once we release all the air off those cars, we have to do that manually. We walk along and bleed rod, or we bleed it by hand. Once we release all the air, we take remote controlled switch engines and we shove it up and over the hill. And this hill is controlled by a computer. As the car goes over the hill, it determines the speed of the wind, which direction it's going, how much that car weighs, and then it lets it go down the east side of this hump into one of the 64 bowl tracks. And that's where we build trains. If we build a train to go to Fort Worth, we might build it in bowl 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we might build a train that goes to Memphis in 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Same thing at the other side. If we're building a train that goes to Denver or something, we'll build that. The west hump, it was built in 1980, and it has approximately 50 tracks. It doesn't have quite as many tracks as this one, but they're a little bit longer. We do build about 15 trains a day off of this, so we figure out about 1,500 cars, 15 trains. So on the average, the trains that we build here in town are right about 100 cars. This, between the diesel shop and our run-through facility, facilities. We consume somewhere between 14 million and 20 million gallons of diesel fuel every month. It used to be that we were number 2 to the United States government, mostly to the Navy, where they have gone nuclear on a lot of their stuff. We are now the number 1 consumer of diesel fuel. So I don't know if we're proud of that, but we do burn a lot of fuel. I was told you have a locomotive on the head end and you have a DP, which is distributed power on the back, that we get about 3.5 gallons per mile. But we can haul a lot of that 3.5 gallons. We're going to try to cross over here. This is our main line. This train came out of the run-throughs, and possibly it's setting out a battle, which would be a car that we found that needed some work. So we're going to be sitting here for just a little bit. In our world, we call that being frogs. So anytime you're frogged, the boss man's looking for you, and you get on the radio and say, well, I'm frogged, I'll be there in a little bit. These cars you see on our right, we have another demonstration over here that we'll show you, but this is the 3rd generation of our refrigeration car. The first one started out, they used block ice, and for anybody that's ever been to Las Vegas got its start because of the railroad. The railroad, that's where they put block ice in their refrigerated cars. And they started kind of taking care of the railroaders with everything that happens in Vegas. The railroad, yeah. Actually, they say whatever happens in Vegas stays on Facebook. But anyway, so once they got rid of the blocked ice, they went to a diesel fuel oil refrigeration car. They used a Detroit diesel engine that was. If any of you guys ever been around Detroit engines, my dad drove a Detroit semi when I was a kid, and boy, they were loud, they smoked, they used oil, they leaked oil. That's what Union Pacific Fruit Express had for a refrigeration unit. And here a few years ago, they came out with these ARMN cars. That's the signage you see on the side of it. And they use a refrigeration unit that I believe has some kind of a cryogenic type cooling system. But it uses a reefer unit like you see on a semi-trailer going down the interstate. Most of them are made by Carrier. We have 4,500 of those ARMN cars in our fleet, and we maintain those here. We clean them out. We have over on the west side. We're not able, because of the buses, to get over to see them, but we have a big clean out place where we service those. And on those ARMN cars, we haul everything from cheese, wine, anything you'd see in the grocery store, we can haul on the railroad. This is, like I said, our main line here. We have 3 main lines. The first 2 that we're going to cross over, that's our eastbound main line. And then our second, or the 3rd main line, that's our westbound main line. For anybody, statistically, December 3rd, 1866 was the first time that the train entered this yard. It was 1878 to 1913. Buffalo Bill Cody had his Wild West show. It was from his ranch that was north of the rail yards. And from December 25th, 1941 to April 1st, 1946, the canteen, which is a big significance of carrying this in North Platte. We had somewhere around 6 million servicemen came through North Platte. We tried to, be nice and give them a meal, give them some cookies, something to drink, and kind of send them on their way to the war. You this will be about as close as we can get to our west hump. But on your right, this is some of our maintenance away, where they store some of the stuff that they use on a day-to-day basis. The big thing that we're going to come to Over here you see is our west hump. And the difference between the east and the west, the east side is straight line. The trains come in from the west, they go up and over the hump, and they go east, and they go out of town. Over on the west side, because of the slope of the earth, you have what we call west receiving. The trains come in, and then the remote control switch engines, like you see over here, this 3102 and the 804, those will grab hold of the train, and they will pull that train past the west hump, and then they push it up and over the hump into one of the 50-bolt tracks, and then they take switch engines on the other end, and they build a train, and they pull them out of the bolts through the trim tracks, and then once they get the train built, then they shove it into what we call west departure. The first thing we're going to come up to up here is our, we call our Mantis. And this is a 150-ton crane. And I'll tell you what, if I call them, I think on the return trip, we can maybe get them to see them a little bit. This is a 150-ton crane. It's a portable crane. Like when if they put a car on the ground, we're actually going to ride that down. Yeah, I've tried it on. What's that? Okay, we'll be back by then. But this is, that was the Mantis. When we come back around, they're going to demonstrate how they lift those locomotives. This other crane you see here, that's a 100-ton, it's a road truck. They can lift wheels if they happen to have a problem out on the road. The next one you see here, and this is where we would lift rail cars. And I was told, I thought it was from Germany, but I'm told that this green forklift is from Ireland. And this forklift, we call it the green weenie. This is what we use. Notice we have a scissor lift jack. We can actually lift those cars up, and we can change out that wheel. Now, before, when we had a bad ordered car, it would take us anywhere from 12 to 15 days to take that car out of service, fix it, and put it back into service. We're able now to change out a wheel in about 5 to 10 minutes without taking that car out of service. So we've just revolutionized the speed at which we can service that car. We don't own that car. That car is owned by either a bank or like OMAX cars. You ever seen on a coal car? Those are owned by Warren Buffett. Any car you see, like the CWEX or the SCYX, this lumber car here, TTZX, IFRX, those cars, any car that ends in an X is owned by a private company, corporation, a bank, some kind of person, and then they just run their cars on our railroad, and we all make money off of that deal. When we first started lifting customers' cars, they got real nervous watching their car go up there. When they realized that we didn't take their car out of the train, and they, you know, going from 10 to 15 minutes instead of 10 to 15 days, they were real comfortable with it. When we first started doing this about 2 years ago, this track you see here, this is what we call West Receiving 9, called IT9, in track repair, IT9. We'll bring a train in that has a lot of bad wheels. They're starting to make a lot of noise, and we'll change them right there. This area on our right, this is where the old roundhouse used to be, and they tore it down, and in I believe somewhere around 1970 they opened up the diesel shop where we were over there. area now is where a lot of our old scrap is. They knew you guys were coming, and so they kind of cleaned it up. But if you look over to your right, there's a big pile of rubbish there. That was an actual box car that once they get to be about 40 years old, they cut them up for scrap. And since we consume so much diesel fuel, everything else we try to recycle. We try to do our part for the environment. But this is the old. This is just an old area where everything goes to die. This building on the right, this is where the car department bases everything. This is what we call our rip track. And the north door is our heavy repair side. The next two doors are where we do our what we call fast track repair. We're not able to lift a loaded car. We have the ability to lift it, but the problem is the ground's not stable enough. So we take our loaded cars that need repairs and we take them to a shop facility that has jacks in the floor, and that way we can lift it safely. But as far as anything empty, when it comes to coal cars, we can lift those out in the yard and change wheels. We change about 10,000 pair of wheels every year. So Greenbrier, they opened up a shop in Hershey, and they're not quite open, but they're getting ready to. And they're going to manufacture wheels there. So we're going to that 10,000 wheels. We're going to keep your guys busy over there. So that's kind of a neat thing. I believe they're going to hire somewhere between 35 and 40 people. So that's going to be a nice little boost for our local economy. This building we're going to come up to on our left, and we're going to turn around. This is what we call, better terms, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but we call it the crack house. And the crack house is where they ultrasonically test the wheels. This is something new to the railroad. This is something Union Pacific wanted designed. They had some engineers come in and design it. And actually, the first time they ran through it, they derailed. They didn't know what they were doing, and they put everything on the ground, locomotives, cars. It was bad. But this is the 2 years that they've done this now, we haven't had a internal defect wheel causing derailment. They found somewhere around 93 wheels so far that have internal defects that you couldn't see by the human eye. I think it's actually more than that, but that's the number they give me. But like I said, out of the 10,000 wheels we change. But this is something that's fully self-automated. We try to get. We have somewhere between 150 and 168 coal sets. That'd be a train that run through here. We try to get each one of those trains through this wheel detect crack house once a year. This area you see where we're going to turn around underneath the overpass here, the Buffalo overpass, this is what we call our Vanard. This is a Vanard, is where we have 12 tracks, and we do flat switching. Where the train comes to town, mostly intermodal traffic, and that train has cars that need to go to Seattle, Portland, Long Beach, Oakland. They'll kick, they'll flat switch, whatever cars into, say, 1 and 2 for Portland, and 3 and 4 for Oakland, and 5 and 6 for Long Beach. And then the next train that comes back will stop, and then we'll pick up those cars. So typically you don't see those cars set around them more than probably 24 hours, because we run every train that we run. As far as a train that we build here, like for Denver, we build in Denver every day. We build a train that goes to Fort Worth every day. We build a train that goes to Memphis every day. We have what we call Z trains. They go from Canal Street, which is Chicago. They come through here every day. We have Canal Street to Seattle, Canal Street to LA, Canal Street to Oakland, Canal Street to Salt Lake City. We have a train that comes in with those ARMN cars, we call it the salad shooter. That's probably the hottest train on the railroad. It comes in every 2 days, and it's nothing but refrigerated cars. And we try to get it in town and out of town as quick as we can. All these tracks on our right, this is the beginning of the receiving yards. Now the tracks to the north, those are the ones that go into our west run-throughs. So there's 9 receiving yards. You can kind of see there's these little flags, these little blue things. That's the derail. We have to work under blue flag protection. What that is we lock up the track. And if we don't lock up the track and we get caught working on unprotected equipment, number one, we're putting our life in danger, but we're also putting our job in danger. We have to have blue flag protection. If we don't, we can be fired. We will be fired. The blue flag protection is derails. Derail goes up, and that basically prevents another train from rolling in on top of you. And then you put a blue flag or a blue light on the lead locomotive, and that's to say that no movement of that locomotive until that flag's removed. So once there's a blue light on it, we can stick our head on the rail and we can do whatever we want, but try to be safe. Guys, once we get up here, I think they'll slow down just a little bit. We'll show them that crane and stuff. This in-train repair, when we go over to the west run-throughs, we have 17 tracks in the west run-throughs. And those are mostly all empty cars on the west side. Most of our loaded stuff comes from the west going east, and most of our empties are east going west. About the only thing you see loaded going west, you see some intermodal traffic is either or, and that's mixed freight. But our grain trains and our trains hauling corn are going west. When we're in the west run-throughs and we have an empty car and they find a bad wheel, we can take our in-train repair, we can take it right to that car, lock it up, and we dump the air, so the brakes are set up, and release the air on those 2 cars. We put that scissor lift jack in there. It's got an Onan engine, little gas-powered engine that runs the hydraulics. And they can lift that car and they can change that wheel out right there in the train. And we do that a lot. Like I said, of those 10,000 wheels, we do a lot of them in the west run-throughs. It used to be that we'd find a bad order, we'd have to set it out. And now they're willing to let that train set for just a little bit. You notice over there on your left, there's all those railroad ties. Those are all old railroad ties. We just went through a major revamp of our receiving yards and our departure yards. We changed out all those rail ties in those 4 yards of east receiving, east departure, west receiving, and west departure. And in my 20 years, that's the first time I've ever seen them do that. So they're finally putting a little money into keeping that rail going. Railroad ties, when I first started, they would last about 20 years. With the traffic that we run on our main line now, we're lucky if we get about 8 years on a tie. It was asked about the concrete ties. The concrete ties were something that we thought was going to just revolutionize the industry, but what we found is we don't have a good base for a concrete tie. If we're in a place where there's a lot of moisture and a lot of groundwater, the rail starts to bounce and go up and down, and it causes those concrete ties to crack. And once you get a concrete tie cracking, they start to shatter. And once you get one tie shatter, then the next one will shatter. And you don't have that with a wooden tie. And a wooden tie, I'm told, is made out of oak. There's actually some kind of an African wood that they use in some of them, but the majority of them are made out of oak, and they're soaked in a creosote toxic some kind of a solution that soaks into the tie to keep it from rotting. They're demonstrating here on this first crane. That's a wheel out of a locomotive. And the reason I know that's a wheel out of a locomotive is you see a big gear. And that's the gear that goes in the traction motor. Anybody knows Terry Curchilio, that's his son, Terry Curchilio Jr. Pretty good employee. So you can see they're running the Manus, like I said, 150-ton crane. You can see he's swinging that locomotive. If they go down in what we call going down in the dirt, they can bring this up and they can block up this crane, and then they can. We are an engineer's best friend with this machine. He can swing that about 2 or 3 feet before he has to move it and reblock it. He's got to be pretty close with the weight, because that locomotive does weigh about 400,000 pounds, so they can only pick up one end of it. This railroad, when the first day I started, we used our shack used to be over here where all these ties and stuff are. And we banked spikes on the main line and walked down it. I was going along pretty good. The old guy I was working with, he was the oldest guy on the seniority roster. He just kept telling me, slow down, slow down. A lot of spikes and bang after lunch. Right after lunch, he told the boss, he says, hey, he knows how to weld. And I said, next day I got to be a welder. And that was a real neat experience. I got to do the weld the rail together. And that's if anybody has not got to see that, that's an awesome deal. They fuse the rail together. This area right in front of us, this is what we call the Gilbert. And I didn't even know where the Gilbert was forever. They say, you go to the Gilbert, well, that's where we get our fuel. And this is where you can see some concrete ties and just some, I don't know, somebody would look at it and call it junk. But what the Gilbert is there was a family, Tom Gilbert, the guy I worked with, he's Carmen. His family lived right there when they was kids. And when the railroad got big, they bought the Gilbert's land and they moved the house and they made railroad. But they always called that the Gilbert. It was named after where the Gilberts lived. All these cars you see to the south, that's all part of some of the 64 bowl tracks. That would be bowl 1, 2, 3, on over towards the diesel shop, bowl 64. These ARMN cars, like I say, over there on the north side of the west bowl, they've got a really, really big facility there that they service those cars. They actually clean out about 60 of those refrigeration box cars per day. Now you can see cars going over the east hump here. You can see how they have a pin puller, and he says 1 or 2 or 3, and that's how many pins they know to pull. As that goes up and over the hump, they weigh that car and they whether it's east or west, and they know the point of impact where it's going to hit down in the mold to that car, and they'll slow it down so that it makes an impact of 1 mile an hour or less. This area on our right, the first building on our right is what we call the schoolhouse. And that's where we used to do all, that's where all the, like Jerry Vieira and a lot of those guys that are part of the total safety culture. Jerry's the one that kind of got these bus tours going, which we're really thankful for him for that. But that's just their building. But the rest of this is the east run-throughs. This is where all our trains come in. The power stays on the train. We have 8 tracks. We run about 20 trains every 8 hours through here, so about 60 a day. All that framework, you see all the iron above the locomotives, that's what we call our sand gantry, and that's how we put sand in the locomotives. The significance of sand is that we use that for traction. We all have 9,000 horsepower on the head end of the train, but we can only put about 12 to 14% of that power to the ground before the wheels start to slip. And then we start to apply sand to the rail between the wheel and the rail to get traction. We also use that sand in emergency brake application. If it's the rail's wet or it's icy, it's oily. These big fuel tanks, well this on our left, this is the old fueling rack, so we've kind of come a long way. These big tanks you see, if you see there's, it says 2.3 million gallon in that tank. And then you'll see, I think this one's 1.8 million gallons. So for the 14 to 20 million gallons of fuel, we mainline it right in from a pipeline. It comes from south of town. These tracks on our left, that's east receiving. That's where the trains come in. The first 2 tracks we use as run-through tracks. If they don't need to do any work underneath the locomotives, they can come over here and we can bring a small semi over and we can fuel locomotives right here. The other 6 tracks are what we use that we use to go up and over the hump. This crossover we're getting ready to go, this is what we call our power transfer. Some people call it the sheep jump, because back in Norway they have crossovers where the sheep can go up and over the rail so they don't get hit. They call that a sheep jump. So somebody put up a sign, and I believe, I'm not for sure if Norway is Dutch, they speak Dutch there, but the sign says this is where the sheep cross at North Platte. So this is what we call the sheep jump. But it'll give you a real, gives you a real good indication of what the east run-throughs, you know, kind of as you can see on your left, the receiving yards. But this shows you what the east run-through is all about. And you can see today there's a lot of what we call intermodal or stack trains. And it seems like on the weekends we see a lot of that. I don't know. They get them together there on the West Coast, and this is about the time they make them. They seem to all kind of run together. Hopefully you won't see a carman doing something he ain't supposed to down in between here. This is where the carman work. Did you notice these coal cars? The average train holds about 135 cars. We can go upwards of 150, 160 cars, but the average coal train is about 135 cars. They each hold about 100 ton of coal. So the total weight of each one of those cars, with the weight of the car and everything, is about 240,000 pounds. This area we're getting ready to come to now is what we call our west run-through. So this is where all the westbound trains come to get serviced. The big building on our left is GE owns that, and they can service about 3 locomotives just like they would if they were in the diesel shop. This used to consist of about 4 tracks over here. What was the west run-throughs in here? A railroad buff, that would be track 276 to 293. Originally it was 289, 290, 291, 293. And then in about 1990, somewhere in there, we built the rest of the west run through. And so we have 17 tracks that we can hold trains in over here. And then we have 17 spare yard tracks where we house all of our spare coal cars. If we happen to bad order 3 or 4 cars in a train and we can't fix them, we can go over to the spare yard and we can put 3 or 4 cars of that brand on that train. This is over here to your left. This is the fuel rack. Now on the east side, we have 8 of those tracks. Over here, we have just the 2. We spend a little bit more time on our empty side inspecting our trains. On the east side, when they're loaded, we usually typically we'll look at a train for about 2 hours, and then we're expecting it to leave. Over here, they can hang around for about 4 to 5 hours. This area up here, we call it Area 51. Now originally, there's been a couple different stories as to what it is, but it's a place of non-existence to some, because it's in the middle of nowhere. Dean Buick told the story yesterday, and I finally got the truth of it. But he kept calling it, every time they got a record number of cars, or trains moved, they would change it to Area 36, Area 37. And he said that by the time he retired, they would be hauling 50 trains through here a day. So he put on there Area 51 because it would never exist. Now we're doing about 60 trains a day through here, but this is Area 51. It's where they call it the Nada Tower. It's not a tower, but we're pretty smart. But the boss man, Dean's, when he was here before he retired, they called that the bunker. That's where the boss's office was over here. But as we're going to turn around here, and you can see kind of that first train over there to the north. That's track 276. And this is 77, 78, 79 over all the way over to 293. Same thing with the old fueling racks. You can see there's some locomotives there, and they're going to be coming up onto this rack. And that's the old fueling rack. That's the original fueling rack. Back in the day, we could get underneath the locomotives. Sometimes we need to get underneath the locomotives to put grease in the traction motors. Maybe put some new brushes, like the brushes in the traction motors. So all of our new service facilities have what we call a pit, so that you can walk underneath the locomotive. But this Area 51, that's where the south window, that's where the car department sits. The middle window is where the diesel shop guy sits. And then the guy that runs the show sits at the north glass. And the guy that runs the show, we call him the yard master. So that'd be where the west run-through yard master sits. You'll notice we got these socks. There's a windsock. We never really talked about that, but we have windsocks all over the place because we do haul a lot of toxic stuff that we probably don't even want to talk about, stuff that you don't really need to know, but it could harm you or could harm us. So we always want to know the direction of the wind. If we do encounter some kind of tornado or some kind of a storm, our first line of defense is to get in the nose of a locomotive, or at all of our service tracks, at the shop, the east run through or the west run through, there's actually tunnels that run up underneath this building on your left over to the service track. All of the lube oil and stuff is all pumped in, and it's underground. We do have special agents out here. We have 4 of them that maintain this area, all under the supervision of Bob Morrison. There are cameras everywhere. Anything that fueling rack, something of any great importance out here that means anything to anybody out here is under the eye of a camera. I've never seen that building. I've seen some pictures of cameras, and they've got a lot. I don't know where they're at. I'm always looking for them. I presume they've caught me picking my nose once or twice. See a lot of trees and wooded areas in some places around here. We got we used to have a lot of jackrabbits. We kind of joked that one day a mama fox came to town with her baby foxes, and all our jackrabbits kind of disappeared. You can kind of see over to your right, way off to the northwest there, you can see some cars and stuff. That's our mini rip. We call that our west mini rip. That's where the car department, any car that comes out of the west run-throughs that we can't service in the train, we set them off over there at the west mini, and we service them there. We do a lot of billing for that. We were talking about our bus driver here. His son works in the car department. He said he tripled his wages the first day he started to work, and I said he's still broke though, ain't he? It's been a good job. Anybody looking for a job, uprr.com. I would suggest mechanical car, if that's what you're looking under. They do not discriminate against age or man or woman. Seems like the last few people we've hired have been older women, older gentlemen. Mostly because on a Saturday night they show up for work and them young kids don't. Your tour guide, her husband, I work with her husband on a regular basis. He's a good guy. You'll notice on this fuel tank it says safety, stay alert, family's everything to you. There's a lot to that. We're all out here for a job, and it is a job. That's the only reason we're here, is to make some money to take home to our family. And in my short 20-year career, I've been unfortunate to see two people lose their life out here. So it is definitely a dangerous place. One guy was a big Baumgartner. He was about 60 years old, motor maker. He fell off the top of a locomotive. And then when I became a carman, about a month before I started as a carman, we had a cut of cars get away as they were coming around a curve out of the mole, and because of the slope of the earth, the cars kept rolling, and Gene Geyer thought the last car had gone by, and he went to get out, put the derail up. Back then we had these flop over derails. It's kind of the irony of the very thing that's supposed to protect your life killed him. He got out to throw the derail, flop it over in the rail, and a cut of 8 cars come along and run him over. And the unfortunate of that is he had a 3-year-old little boy at the time, I believe. So that little boy doesn't have a daddy today because of it. But the great thing about the railroad, they took care of his family, and we're thankful for that side of it. This area you see on your right is the what we call the Y. If you see there's some tracks here, this is how we make an eastbound or an east spacer turn west. We can make a U-turn right here. You pull it over there underneath the hump, and then you throw a switch, and then you back it all the way over here, and you throw a switch, and then you can come back to the west. And that's how we turn a locomotive around. We always kind of joke, you better know east or west, because sometimes it's the other west. But no turntables anymore. No, we got just the Y, and better hope they're right. We call them east spacers and west spacers. That's what they always want to know on the old tower. Which direction is it facing? whenever they release a locomotive at night, the diesel shop goes 4 in the morning till 4 in the morning. That's a 24-hour period for them. Whenever they release a locomotive, they always got to tell that diesel tower, 7385 east, 4699 west. You can see over on your left, you can see some of the tracks. You can see there's cars going down into one of the 64 bowl tracks. Right next to those bowl tracks then is the 4 service tracks where we can house about 28 locomotives on that service track. We can bring all 28 of those locomotives onto that rack. We can service them. We can fuel anywhere from 1,500, 2,500, 3,000 gallon of fuel in about 30 minutes in all 28 of those locomotives. We can pump it as quick as we want to put it in. We try to get about 35 to 40 locomotives out of the barn or diesel shop every day. We try to release those at 4 in the morning. If you guys notice that wheel trip, if you ever want to piss off the manager on duty at 4 in the morning, he thinks he's going to get to claim a unit, and you say, well, that's good to go, except it needs to go to the wheel trip. And you're not his friend then. See, like these locomotives here, they're just waiting to go on to the service track. A lot of these locomotives on the west end of the shop, they're all waiting to be released. They might be apart or they might even be done. They're just waiting to become picked up and taken to the departure yards and put on a train. This tent building you see to the west here, this is the original supply department. They built a tent, I think because the railroad was a little bit cheap and they were trying to scoff the government out of some tax money. It's not a building, it's a tent. That tent's been there longer than I've been working here. But GE took over that tent and the Union Pacific built this big building that they pay taxes on now, and this is what the supply department is. And that big building took over what used to be the tent. That's as far as my tour goes. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed being part of your experience with the Union Pacific Railroad. This is a pretty neat experience to get to come out and tour this place.